G'day, Damien Landers and Stats File fans. This is Binman. Welcome to the Binman Stats File preview podcast of the last game for the 2026 home and away season for the Mighty Demons. Our huge game at the MCG tomorrow afternoon. Cannot wait for that game. Before I go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm recording this podcast, the Bunurong people, and pay my respects to elders past and present and emerging leaders that might be listening to the show today. Thanks for your support during the year. This is the last of the home and away Stats File preview podcast. It's awesome to think that I've got the opportunity to preview finals, whether that be in worst case scenario, if we lose this week, it'll be a wild card round. If we win, as I expect that we will, it'll be elimination final. That will be huge. I just hope it's not elimination final against Collingwood. We'll beat them. If that's the case, we'll beat them. But just it makes me sick, the idea of going back to the MCG and another game, in the cauldron against the Pies, but that's a tale for in a couple of weeks, hopefully, or not, as the case may be. Let's hope Collingwood don't end up in that position. Love for them. I'm not sure I have to do my ladder predictor. Love for them to have to go to Adelaide to play Adelaide. So, we're going to jump into the preview. So the preview, in terms of the overview, obviously tomorrow it's the MCG. Our record against the Bulldogs is 93 wins, our all-time record, 93 wins to 83 for the Dogs. At the venue, we've got a commanding lead there at the venue, 49-30 at the MCG, our fortress, our home ground. That's awesome. Some other bits and bobs from the Weirlo preview page is the ratings. The overall rating is we're plus 15.9 on Willows ratings, and they're minus 2.3. How that's split up between attack and defence, we're plus 12.1 for attack, reflecting how fantastic we've been this season at putting score on the board. As I talked about a number of times, it's not so much the score on the board that I think that's key, it's how quickly we can score, and when we drop the hammer, as I heard someone say, I think it was David King say on First Crack, drop the hammer and score quickly, maybe it was Joey Montagna, score 6-7 goals in a quarter, but we can score 3-4 goals in quick order. Then negative 4.8, reflecting for attack, reflecting how much they've struggled this season to put a score on the board. It's been a real battle for them in that space. Defensively, our defensive rating has improved significantly through the course of the season. Helped last week by, I think it was 58 points, wasn't it, that we kept Port to I think I'm right in saying, our lowest for the season. Terrific defensive performance. I probably didn't pump it up as much as I might have on the podcast, on the Demonland podcast with George on Monday. Really awesome performance, and it was heartening to hear. It was obviously top of mind because I heard players talk about that first in some of the post-game interviews. That first thing they highlighted, in fact, was not our scoring, was how well we defended. So defensively, we're much better in the last little bit, plus 3.8 and plus 2.5 for the Dogs. So defensively, they're not too bad, but we've got their measure in that space. And there's not too many teams, or certainly at the top end of the ladder, that we do match in defence. And I'm not sure that we match. I'll have to check. I don't know that we match any other team in defence, actually, for our rating in the top 10, the other top 10 teams. That's where you arrive at the overall rating. Negative 2.3 for the Doggies and plus 15.9 for us. In terms of the selected sides, I'll go into the sides in a sec in terms of who was selected. The average age for us is 26.2. The Doggies is 25.4. Another game where we've, like last week actually, surprisingly, we've got a higher average age and also a higher average matches, 119.3. Our selected team averages to their 95.5. So that's a pretty inexperienced Bulldogs unit. In terms of some of the other bits and bobs, the last, having a look at I'll get into the attacking stuff in a sec, but just sort of the high level stuff, time in forward half, we're a forward half footy team, 51.8%. Of the time, they're 49.3. Time in possession, we're actually negative 1.9, and they're negative 5.2. So against our opponent, that is, the Oppo has the ball a little bit more than us and a lot more than the Dogs. Big one here is contested possessions. We're plus 5.6, they're negative 4.5 differential, that is. So on average, we average 5.6 more contested possessions than our opponent. And the Doggies average 4.5 less contested possessions than their opponent, which is a bit similar to what I was saying about the Suns a few weeks ago, is that it's unusual, I think, in Bevo's history at least, to have a team that is struggles in that contested ball space. So, yeah, it's a curious one. Just the other one of those top-level ones is clearances. They've got us in that space. They win more clearances than us. They're plus 1.9 clearances on average differential against their opponents. They play, we're bang on. Actually, now we're bang on. So we have as many clearances as our opponents on average. And I'll unpack this in a bit more detail later in terms of that aspect, is the Doggies win clearances, but they struggle to put a score on the board from those clearances. Looking at some of the recent encounters and that information, let's have a look here. So our recent encounters between these two teams, between us and the Doggies, is Reed's actually not great reading. They've won the last 3 games against us. So earlier this year, round 11, on the Sunday, May 24th, they beat us 14 goals 9, 93 to 13 goals 12, 90. We had, what's that, so 25 to 22 more scoring shots and lost that game. I thought they, deserved to win that game. We, of course, Langford almost took a mark in the goal square, top of the goal square, right at the end of the game, which would have given us the win. Certainly would have taken the 4 points. But they played really well that day. I thought it was terrific effort by us actually to be in a position to win that game, and the boys fought it out super well. Nonetheless, they won that. It's relevant that was at Marvel, a ground that I don't think particularly suits the way that King's got us playing. We can't. At Marvel, we really struggle to take advantage. I mean, it's just smaller, and so we can't spread in the same way that or use the width of the ground in the same way that we do at the G to such good effect. And just a reminder, just watch, how we move the ball, how often it is right along the boundary line. So, we really look to use the width of the G, and that really isn't an option at Marvel or at Darklands, as I prefer to call it. Our previous game to that was, interestingly, so we've only played the Bullies once for the last 3 seasons now. We played them in round 22 last year. We lost that game by 6 points, 99 to 105. And then the year before that was the last time we played them. Before that, they won at Marvel 110 to 59 in round 21. In round 21 and 24. So just looking, that's interesting actually. Sorry, what am I saying? We'll play them twice this year. So we played them once last year and once in the previous year. So, but curiously, we're playing them in round 24 this year, and we played them in round 22 in 25 in 2025 and 21 in 2024, which is interesting. In terms of the form for both teams, the Doggies are 9th. They've won 12 this season. They've had a draw and 9 losses. The draw, of course, came in their last game, which was against the Blues, Western at Marvel Stadium at Darklands. 12 goals, 10 each apiece, 82 points. Interesting game, that one. And curious because the Dogs played a really different game to how they have playing. I mentioned their contested possession numbers before, the down on their historic numbers under Beveridge. They were much, much better in that space. They really brought the heat and really looked to disrupt the Blues' ability to play that Brisbane style, control the game with high kicks and then go. And I thought really sort of for the first time put Blues under pressure, or the first time the Blues, I should say, have been put under pressure for a while. And I think that from the finals perspective, I think that's a weakness of the Blues is I don't think they have the quality of the Lions, and so the method of controlling the ball by foot requires skilled players, obviously, and that came undone a bit last week under the Western Bulldogs. Really terrific pressure, so they really got back to high pressure contest first footy last week, but otherwise it was, like it was a good game in the sense that it was close and it ended up being a draw. But I actually wasn't very impressed with either side. I have to say, particularly the Blues. I'd have to say the other aspect of just while I think of it is I'm amazed the Blues didn't go for a win. I thought that was, of course, I guess you're tempted to close up shop and get the draw to make sure you finish top 10, but it means that they have to, most likely scenarios, they go to Adelaide, play Adelaide and Adelaide, where they've never won a game of footy, I think I'm right in saying. So it would have been much better to win, and all they needed to had the ball. All they needed to get was a point on that last play, and they'd most likely be playing Collingwood at the MCG, which I actually think they would be obviously much more confident than going to Adelaide, but I think they would have won, which meant they then sort of get into the elimination final. I think that was not really that much discussed in the media, and I certainly think that they missed a trick there. The previous two games for the Doggies, they lost. They got beaten by the Roos, 177 to 100. The week before, they lost to Freo in the game I talked a bit about on the Demon Land podcast. That Freo really, that took ages to get going in that game. So 78-41, and it's an interesting game as it relates to this game, because the Bulldogs look to slow that game to a crawl and not allow the Bullies Freo to, for most of the game, to get that overlap run going, to get that wave running, to get that sort of fast ball movement from the halfback flank. They flooded back. They were slow in their movement. They tried to control the footy. It might have worked. They kicked 5-11 in the end, but so, this is the nature of it, though. 41 points is not going to get it done against a contender, obviously, or against any team. And it wasn't enough on that day. I think it was sort of roughly level at three-quarter time. I raise that game in the context of this game that we've got against the Doggies, because I do wonder whether Bevo will do exactly the same thing in this game, because if this game gets into a running game, which I think we'll try to generate, they've got no chance against us, zero chance. So it's really, really curious what approach Bevo will take, I think. The previous two games to that, they 105-48 win over the Tigers, and they rolled Gold Coast up there on the Gold Coast, 77-68. So as you can see by those scores, their highest score in the last 5 games is 100. So they don't get to 100 very often, but the scores of 82-77. Sorry, their high score in that period is 105 against the Tigers, I should say. So scores in the last 5 games: 82, 77, 41, 105, and 77. As I noted, they just really struggling to put a score on the board, which is another curiosity, I think, for a Beveridge team, because ordinarily, scoring is their go, defending is their weakness. So this year they haven't been scoring, and defensively they've not been great. In some respects, it's remarkable that they've made the wild card 10th, but another reason why they don't want to go to Adelaide, because that's a big gap between they certainly don't want to go to Adelaide. That's a big gap between those two sides. So when I say that, between 7th and 10, whether it's Blues or Dogs. Of course, our last 3 games wins. We beat Port Adelaide, fantastic performance. We beat the Freo Dockers the week before that, the best game I've seen for many a year. The Suns before that, we lost to the Cats in a game that I still think King would be furious. We lost that game. That really rankles. And we beat the Roos at Darklands before that. If we win this game, what's that? So that's 6 of 7. I think might even be 7 of 8. That's fantastic form line going into a final. So it's really, really important. Obviously, it's important that we win this game to shore up 6th position. Been banging on about that all year, but leaving that aside, just in terms of hitting the finals in really good nick, playing our very best footy, that's really important as well. So in terms of the last game against the Plate, I'll speak to that in a little bit ahead of the keys to winning, because it's sort of, I think there's some lessons from that game or some things in that game that are useful to bring forward to this game in terms of how it will look. In terms of the injury space, just the last five, I'll quickly talk to the last 5 games before I jump to the injury. So I think this is instructive, really highlights the issue that I was just flagging before about their inability to put the score on the board. In the last 5 matches, our average points for is 109.6. That's good going, isn't it? It's exciting footy to go watch, that's for sure. They're only averaging 76.4 in the last 5 games. Average points against. So, we've been knocked for our defensive work and our defensive profile a little bit in the last little while. Average points against is not only 92.6 in the last 5, 75.2 for them. So, like teams, they've been quite defensive, the Dogs. Average winning margin, 26 for us, 33 for the Dogs. Average losing margin, 20 and 30. Average total match points, and again, this sort of tells the same tale. In the last 5 matches, our average total match points is 202.2. That's good going for lots of ads for 7 if they're covered on 7. Conversely, their average total match points in the last 5 games, the Dogs, that is 151.6. Pretty dour games of footy, particularly given how many of them. Let's have a look. At least 2 of them were at the Darklands. So it's how many? So 3 of them were at the Docklands. So, so that's given that's perfect conditions for footy under there. So that's pretty low scoring total match points for those 2 teams. So jumping through to injury, I was actually a little bit surprised because of all the talk about their injury. They've got some players back, but it's not actually that bad, all things considered. The injury list is, and I don't know Nick Caulfield, whether he's best 23. He's out. Sam Darcy's the big one, obviously. He's out. Tim English is another huge one. He's out. Riley Garcia, Will Lewis, Lockie Smith and Adam Treloar. Adam Treloar's best 23, but not been terrific in the last year. So, I'd say 15 to 23. Tim English is obviously best 23, he's top 5. And Sam Darcy's obviously probably their best player. So he's huge. And Riley Garcia is best 23, but he's not, he's certainly not top 10. So that's really only 4 or 5 of their best 23 out. Not much worse than us, except for who they've got out. They've managed Libba. That's massive. That's managed Libba, but I did hear or read that he's carrying a bit of an injury. He's no guarantee of playing next week. So maybe he's out injured as well. So certainly he's a top 5 player as well. So, obviously they're missing some of their stars. As I've talked about, we're looking much better. It's a huge blow, obviously. I'll talk to that in selections, having no JVR. But our injury list is looking, a hell of a lot better than it was 4 or 5 months ago. Our best 23, our injury list is Jed Adams, Jai Cully, Blake Howes, Thomas Matthews, Brodie Myercheck, Andy Menzies Wakefield, and Van Ruin. And probably, arguably, Brodie Myercheck would be best 23, though, with the improvement of Jeffo and Royan, I should say. Maybe not next season, but certainly he was when he went out. So let's count him. And Van Royan is out with suspension. He's on the injury list. So let's count him as well. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 of our best 23 not available, but that, obviously looks a hell of a lot better than it did just a little while ago. Injury list looking not too bad. In terms of the ins, of the impact of those ins, it's quite remarkable, actually. So those changes in terms of net impact on player rating. So just looking at the Wheelo player ratings, which are very similar to the Champion Data ratings and the AFL player ratings. Similar methodology to calculate them. The net impact of bringing of the outs is in terms of who they're bringing in is Marcus Bontempelli, Dale, Ryan Gardner and Connor Buderick, and out is Tom Liberatore, Lockie Jacks, Jordan Croft and Lewis Emmett. the net impact of those players going out is those players going out and Bontempelli, Dale, and Gardner Buderick coming in is plus 20.7. That's crazy. So, and the net impact for us of Xavier Lindsay coming in and Jacob Van Rooyen, unfortunately, going out is only minus 0.9. So we don't lose too much. It's huge. Like Van Rooyen out is huge. It's really massive. I don't know that it'll hurt us so much in this game because I think we can cover. The selection, obviously it's Van Rooyen out. I was really hoping he'd get that down to 2 weeks. Really disappointed that obviously it goes without saying that it wasn't. But look, I actually also disappointed in him as well. I don't think there was any malice in it. It was clumsy. But, he's done that before. He's missed finals. He's missed, I think it was a semi, was at 23 for very similar, actually. No malice, swinging arm contest. So I think I'm right in saying that. So, yeah, I think whilst it would have been great to get it down to 2, I wasn't shocked that it wasn't. I'm disappointed that Ruse put himself in that position again. But I'm sure he is too. Like there's no, mistakes happen. It's just, really disappointing. He must be gutted, the poor fella. It gives us an opportunity. And King, I think, is increasingly, I'm really impressed with he brings a great psychology to the game, I reckon. And he will be, I don't think he's adverse to the messaging of let's keep winning for Roo and get him back in this side. And if they do, he'll be back in our prelim side. So look for him at the prelim time. So I think Lindsay Inn's huge for us though. So he's a jet. He's such a jet. I'm actually pretty amazed on at least if Demon lands a good sort of, I guess, proxy for Demons fans, which I think it is, that he doesn't get more love. Like he's such a good footballer. I thought his performances at the halfback before he went out of the team with injury were much, much better than he was giving credit for. He's such a beautiful user of the ball. His kicking was a thing of beauty in the KC game last week, in the KC Box Hill game. That goal he kicked was just magic, just fantastic user of the ball, good decision maker, holds on to it if there isn't an option, hits targets. He's a jet. He immediately makes us better, Rune being out notwithstanding. I'll have to say, looking at the vision from that Casey game too last week, he looks in great nick. Be really fascinating to see where they play him, in what role. For me, I think he goes into the half-back rotation, into the back 7 rotation. So leaving Salo to play that sort of play up forward, him in the sort of half forward, high half forward, small pressure forward rotation. That's how I think it will look. But, he could go to the wing. That's the other option. Lindsay could go to the wing and Langdon could go back to the halfback flank, a role he's played. Well, in fact, from memory, he might have even played that role in the round 11 game against the Dogs when we played him last time. But a role Langdon's played at least in a half dozen games, 4 or 5 early in the season. So that could be another option. And how beautiful would that be? Langford on one wing, Lindsay on the other, 2 high draft picks, both taken at the same time, but, both left footers gracing the wing. For me, he looks like a natural winger. I love the way he moves. It's bordering on heresy, but he moves a little bit like Robbie. So that would look awesome at the G of those 2 boys, XL and the Bison on opposite wings. So I mentioned their ins, but obviously the big one is Bont. It's massive that I can't believe they've managed. I guess it's one of the curious things about the game, about, what approach they take to this game. But if it was a must-win game and he was not, his injury meant that he couldn't play, you'd have to think that Liberatore would play in this game, particularly given how critical clearances will be and winning stoppage battle in the contest and all of those things, the things that he is so brilliant at. So, yeah, it's an interesting decision to even call it managed, not injury. I'm not really sure what's going on there. It goes without saying that Bont is a massive int. I just love watching him play footy. He's probably my favourite Melbourne player. So Bailey Dale is an interesting one. He was really good against us last time. I'll speak to him in my key players. he was really good. I don't think he will have nearly the same influence in this game, simply because I don't think we'll let him. But he's obviously a big in, so it'll be terrific to actually see Bont play again. He's, as I say, he's a fantastic footballer. I love the way he kicks the football, and I love the way he inserts himself in the game when it's time to do so. The betting in this game is let's have a look. So $1.46 for us to win this game. The doggies are $2.73. What's the line? The line is 14.5 points. The overs and unders for total match point is 184. Not sure about the betting in this game. These games there's too many variables a little bit in terms of. Well, I guess in terms of what the Bulldogs are going to do, but if I was forced to have a bet, I would go Melbourne the line. Where my feeling is we'll smash them. And partly we've got everything. It's a bit what I was saying last week against Port. We've got everything to play for. They've not got nothing to play for, I guess. However, in their mind, they've got the top 10 locked up. They know what they're doing, in terms of what that looks like. No players want to get injured, and miss out on playing in the wildcard round. And conversely, none of our players want to go out of the side. We've got Viney in the wings, so we've got Melksham there who could come in, though I don't think we will, Heath, so we've got Latrell, who, must be, ruining that concussion, obviously. So we've got players who can come in and bring pressure. So none of our players are going to be dropping off, and we just have to win. We have to win, finish fifth. We win, we finish fifth, and we play, it's critical. We really have very little sort of chances of making an impact come these finals if we don't finish top six. So the most likely scenario, I think, is the Bulldogs, so the Carlton will go to third only if they beat Freo. So, the most likely scenario is wildcard round is Collingwood, Bulldogs, Adelaide versus Carlton. And if we finish fifth, we will play the winner of the Bulldogs and the Pies. Bit of luck, that will be the Bulldogs, because we'll beat them this week and we'll beat them in an elimination final at the MCG as well. It's one of those games where they don't really have a hell of a lot to play for in some senses. Apart from pride, and they certainly sort of put a great effort in last week. So even though the top 10 was locked up, so maybe they'll come out firing. But if Freo, it's interesting because the Freo game is a bit behind us. It starts at 1:10 or something, I think. So, or is it maybe a bit later? The Freo Carlton game. If Carlton happen to win that, then it changes the dynamic, and that they can go up, and the Bulldogs will have to go to Adelaide to play the Adelaide Crows. So, though, from that perspective, they won't know that probably coming into the game, because that game won't have been finished yet when our game starts. At least I don't think it will. And so, that's a sort of variable. But getting back to the betting, I think that we've got everything to play for. They don't. So that's a good starting, but we're a much better side as those ratings I said before. So the 14.5 is I think a good value bet. And, plus 40 is probably not a bad value bet at 350, or maybe it's a little bit short. So I wouldn't probably look at the total match points, only because the Bulldogs aren't scoring enough. You need both teams scoring for the total match point to be a good bet. I looked at the futures. I'll just have a quick look at the future bets. I've been talking about them. Let's bring that up. Where is it? It's not wanting to load. So let's have a look. AFL, the future bets for Premiership winner, 275 to win the flag. We're into 18. I stupidly said 13 last week. I misread that. I think we're 34 when I mentioned it, but we're after the win on the weekend, we're $18 to win the flag. So, that we're in it to win it. And as opposed to the Crows, who, now because they're dropped down, they're $26. So when they beat us, they were, they had really jumped up the charts in terms of the Premiership odds. And I thought that was way over the odds. So way over the true odds, I should say. So, and that's proven to be the case here into 26. So just on another note, the Swans are out to $31 for the flag. That's crazy. That's really quite remarkable because they would have been second favourite behind Freo, or maybe equal favourite Brisbane Lions, second favourite $3.25. To make the top four, we're $4.20. So very little chance of that happening with $3, I think, before the start of the round last week. And they're not taking bets on us to make top six anymore. So top six is no longer an option. So I guess we're even money or unbackable, not even money, I should say, but unbackable to make the top six. So, yeah, my even money bet to make the top six then looks very good from a few weeks ago. Weather looks great. Looks beautiful day. Oh, geez, I love Melbourne in spring. It's fantastic. They're racing tomorrow at Sandown Heath, which is not so fantastic with the valley closed. But beautiful afternoon, 16 degrees, not much wind, west-south wind, 19 kilometres an hour. Much likelihood of rain, 25%. Good cloud cover, 69%, just in terms of, so it's a 4:10 start, 4:15, so often can get at sort of half time, get a bit dewy if it's clear, so that's good from that perspective. 64% humidity, awesome. So they're great conditions for footy, only 26 kilometres, so really good for us, really, really good for us, and also for fans. So fans get along. That's really super important that we get along and support the Ds. King has been really red hot on that this year. I mentioned the result last time. It was a really curious game of footy. And in my preview, I got a bit wrong in that preview. It's interesting because my preview last time, I think I could carry over for this time. So in last time, I thought we would look to exploit our advantage of transition and moving the ball from the back half and having just destroyed Hawthorn. So I thought that's how we would roll. So it was interesting. In that game, because the opposite happened, so we didn't transition the ball. Our pressure and contest was really good, but our running power wasn't there. So in my review in that game that they won 3 points, I argued that fatigue was a big factor insofar as it impacted our ability to run and to cover the ground. Our contest numbers and pressure numbers were excellent and really good, and I think we beat them in both. I think it was up in the high 180s. So our strength was there, but our running power wasn't there. And I think that, I argued that we'd yet to have a bye, so we were really sort of gagging towards the bye and looking for that. But we targeted the previous games. We targeted the Swans game in the 3 previous games to that round 11 game that was the Swans, a high-octane running game up in Sydney, the Anzac Eve game versus the Tigers where we blew them off the park, and the Hawks. And we were also targeting the Big Freeze King's birthday in a fortnight, which was the next game was our woeful performance against the Giants at Traeger Park, where we just couldn't cover the ground at all and got cut up as a result on the huge Traeger Park deck. So in the review, I should say, of that round 11 loss to the Dogs, I argued that sort of a big factor was our running power, and that sort of lack of running power and our fatigue meant that we played a slightly different method than we sort of our A game, which is what we're playing at the moment. And that method was frustrating for a lot of Demonlanders because it involved a lot of long kicks to the top of the goal square. Now that worked fine the week before against the Hawks, but people were bemoaning, that we weren't getting that sort of overlap handball run, lots of long territory kicks in particular to the top of the goal square. And, we didn't really have much run and transition like we do when we're playing our best footy from the back half. And conversely, they did. Like, they have not been very good at all this year in the transition space, the Dogs, and were really good in that game. I say slightly different method because, as King has said many times, we're a low possession territory team, and kicking long to a contest is a central plank of King's game plan. We're still doing that, even when our transition and ball movement game is up and about like it has been in the last 2 games in particular. But in that game against the Dogs in round 11, we really leaned into that meat and potato method of getting territory, trying to trap it in, winning at the coalface, winning the contest and winning the pressure. But our sort of lack of running power was really evidenced by what I think is a really, really important stat, or is their running power is average speed and defence, which is defined when it's a stupidly named stat. It's available on the AFL, only available as far as I know. I can't find it anywhere else, on the AFL app, mobile app on the telephone. Or AFL app, and all the GPS across a range of categories. I've spoken to them a bunch of times, but average speed and defence is defined as when the opponent has the ball, not average speed in the defensive zone, for instance, and it's critical. So when we lose that, or we don't have the majority of the top 5 players in it. They only list the top 5 on the track on the app. We often lose those games. So, and that was the case in the lead up to these games. So, for instance, in that round 11 game, we lost. So, but the top 4 players for average speed and defence were all Dogs. Crossy was 5th. But in our previous 2 games against the Hawks, we had 2 of the top 5 with Cross number 1. Against the Tigers, where we flogged them, we had the entire top 5 with Laurie number 1. This week, for instance, against Port, or last week against Port, I should say, again, top 5 average speed and defence were all Demon players. Interestingly, number 1 average speed and defence in that game was Salo. So again, I mentioned that he's a lot quicker than what he's giving credit for. Salo, he had 56% game time. He's running actually his average speed in defence, which, as I say, is critical, is pretty good. So, sort of as an example of when it doesn't work against the Bombers in that awful loss in Adelaide, that's the top 5 average speed and defence were all Bombers. And why that's important, so why it's such an important number is because when the average speed when the opponent has the ball means that multiple players are running to cover off switches to make it difficult for the opposition to transition the ball, to support defending turnover. Those things are critical. And as, for example, we've been criticised for how many points we've given up on turnover. It really annoys me, actually, because the clubs get hit about the head and they bring up these numbers on the various footy shows. Well, I didn't hear a single person say that we only gave up 28 points. That's right, 28 points on turnover against Port last week. Incredible defensive performance, and that was on the back of our ability to get numbers to the contest and have our average speed and defence, dominate that category. So, in that game against the Dogs, we didn't have Latrell didn't play, so he was obviously key to some of that running power that we've got up to that point. And Sharp, Chin, Laurie and Cross, all critical players up to that point, and Langdon, all critical players for our running power and average speed and defence, average speed and offence, total sprints, total distance, repeat sprints, all of those things which are critical for how we play in terms of our running. Latrell didn't play in that game. The others all had days off, had off days and didn't cover the ground the way they normally do. And so, as I said in the preview and the review of that game the review of the game is that the Dogs, it's to mitigate our lack of run, we just went deep all the time and tried to play a meat and potatoes game, and they beat us. So, so from a stats perspective, there were some curious things from that game. One of them being they had what did I say? So they had the top 4 players for average speed and defence in that game. The Dogs did. Some other curious things from a stats perspective from that game is with no English. So English didn't play in that game and isn't playing in this game. So with no English, they beat us for total stoppages. By the by, a related curious thing that I don't know whether it's coincidence, perhaps it isn't. In both games, their young ruck Emmett played the previous week, but was dropped for us. So in their round 10 game he played and then was dropped for the round 11 game against us. He played last week, Emmett, and was dropped for this game. So that might be that perhaps that's about him getting smashed up by Maxi. I'm not sure. Anyway, so in that game they beat us for total stoppages, so in the raw number, but we just pipped them for scores from stoppages. So we were plus 6 points in that game for scores from stoppages. But winning the total stoppages helped them win territory. And so they were plus 10 for inside 50s, for instance. They're also plus 10 for contested possessions. And reflecting what I said before, that their transition game was better than ours that day, and their transition game hasn't been great all season, so it was better than ours that day. They moved the ball from the back half better than us on that day, so they were plus 12, for instance, from scores from turnover, and beat us. I can't remember what it was. Let's have a look. It was plus 12, so from scores from their defensive half, which is an important stat for us, and they beat us from scores from turnover. We don't lose many games. Well, I should say we don't have many games where we beaten for inside 50s because we're a territory team, and we don't have bugger all games where we've beaten for contested possessions and scores from turnover and defensive half, all in the one game. So, to only lose that game by 3 points was pretty impressive effort. But yeah, they were really curious numbers. In that game, Ed Richards had a blinder. He was huge. 30 disposals, 773 metres gained, 10 clearances, 10 inside 50s, 9 score involvements and 3 goals. That is a hell of a game. He was the highest rated player on the ground with 24.2 player rating points. Number 2 for the game was Bont with 22.7. I already talked him up enough. Maxi was our third, 18.1 rating points, which remarkably is almost bang on his season average. So just an average game for him, just kicking around at the elite level. Surely Maxi will be made the captain of the All-Australian squad. He has to be, surely. It just has to be. Norton had a great game, one of his best games for the season. He was fourth rated player on the ground, 18.1 rating points. Langford was terrific. He was the fifth highest rated player on the ground with 14.4, meaning the Dogs had the top 2 rated players for the game in round 11 and 3 of the top 5 rated players. So again, the fact that we got within 3 points and could have won the game probably sort of indicates the how well we toughed that game out. So does this. So, as I said, they beat us for total clearances. They won the territory count, and they were beating us around the ground in terms of stoppages, though not scores from. But we really hung tough in that last quarter. They won the inside 50 count in the last quarter, 19-8, so plus 11 for inside 50s in that quarter, and clearances 15-6 in the quarter, so plus 9 for clearances, but only won the quarter by a point. And as I said, Langford takes that mark, we win that game. So really, tough effort by the boys, and nothing to be ashamed about in that loss, that's for sure. In terms of drilling down a little bit more on the sort of comparison between the team stats, again, this is on from Willow Ratings. Go to AFL, and if you look at the AFL match preview, it's an excellent way to get an overview of the game. I really, really like it. So in attack, we've got them for everything in attack, so that it looks beautiful on the page. Purple all the way down one column. We're averaging 100.6 points a game. They're only averaging 81.5, which I'd love to. I don't know. I'll put it in my Binman Intelligent BI. I'm going to say that's their lowest average score for a season for a long time. How's that? So we have them for points from turnover. This is huge. I haven't put this particularly in our keys for winning, but we're averaging 57.5 points from turnover, and that was inflated by a bananas 111 points on turnover against Port. 111 points. No one talked about that much either. Jeez, 111. Everyone was talking about us giving up 101 against the Cats. Not many people were talking about us scoring 111 against Port. We just blitzed them. So that really jumped up that average, 57.5. Points from turnover for them is 42.6. Points from stoppage, 39 we're averaging a game. They're averaging 32.3. Our chain to score percentage, 23.1% of our chains result in a score, only 20.5 for them. Defensive 50 to forward 50 percentage, 24.1 of our chains move from the D50 to our forward 50. It's only 23.4 for them. Inside 50s, like this is huge, really speaks to our game style, and it's a massive thing for this game. Inside 50s, we're averaging 57.2 a game. They're only averaging 50.6 inside 50s a game. We're having 29.5 shots a game. They're only having 24.5, so it's not really an accuracy thing. They're low scoring. We're averaging 46% of the time we go inside 50. They're averaging 44.7% of the time they go inside 50. Defense looks a bit better for them. 86.6 is their average against score. Ours is 90.5. I've said this before, but it was around 10. I think that was 100.5. So it's dropped 10 points since round 10. So, let's say halfway, it'd be good if Melbourne get a bit of love for that improvement too. Points from stoppages conceded. They concede less than us, 34.4. Us is 35.9. The point was made that's too high for us. Well, we only gave up 28 points last week. If there was a stat that I spoke to, that Montagna spoke to on I think one of the first crack shows, that we were bottom 5 for points against from turnover. And that bottom 5, so confusing turnover and stoppages. So we're bottom 5 for points from turnover. So the point was we needed to defend turnover. We're now giving up 52 points. It's 47.9. I said that was 2 weeks ago. If we give up no more than 68 points in our last 2 games, we'll be outside that bottom 5. So in any case, so it was 28. So we've got a 40-point margin on turnover for the Dogs to get us outside that bottom 5. The point was made that no team has won with that profile or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Points from stoppages, almost bang on, actually. So they concede their opponents score 34.4, ours 35.9. We defend stoppage reasonably well, so do they. But we've actually got them. We defend scoring chains better, chain to score percentages better defensively, and ditto for D50 to forward 50, inside 50. We defend inside 50 better. So scores for inside 50 is 44.8 to 47.2, the opponents, that is. So we beat them in that space as well, or we match them in that space. In terms of the player ratings for these two teams, everyone will know Melbourne's player rating. So obviously, number one is Maxi Gawn having his, at least from player rating perspective, his best season he's had in AFL footy, which is pretty remarkable at the age of 34. 17.8 his player rating is. Cozzy Pickett, 15.4 in number two. Tommy Sparrow, how awesome is it that he's signed on? Fantastic, 13.6 player rating points this season. Jake Bowie, he's been just so reliable since he's come back in. Barely made a mistake or put a foot wrong in that time. But he certainly hasn't had a bad game. 13.2 is his rating. And Jack Steele rounds out our top 5, 12.4 player rating points. And then Heath is actually next. No, he's not. What am I talking about? So, no, not. So, yeah, Cozzy, Sparrow, Jake Bower, Kate Chandler's next, 13 player rating points. For them, it's interesting because they've got two, I think I'm right in saying Bont now is the highest rated player this year again. He's 18.5 for his season. Fantastic. If you think about it, how well Maxi's played and his rating is 17.8. Well, Marcus Bontempelli, his rating's 18.5. Really nuts. He's 84% time on ground. He's averaging 26.3 disposals a game. He goes at 73% efficiency. He's 5.9 inside 50s a game. Just beautiful numbers. 11.2 contested possessions a game. Wins his own ball, uses it super well. One of the best players I've ever seen play footy. He's their highest rated player. No surprise who's number two, Ed Richards, 17.7. Bailey Dale, it drops away a little bit there. He's number 3. He's 13.6. Well, in fact, he's exactly the same as our third highest rated player, Tom Sparrow. And then English and Liberatore next. They're both not playing. Riley Sanders, 10.5, and Joel Frazier, who had a pretty good game last week, I have to say. And the improving Matthew Kennedy is 10.2. So he's, of the players playing, he's their 1, 2, 3, 4. He's their 5th highest rated player of those who's playing. And James O'Donnell's had sort of an improved season as well. Or in the last little bit as well. He'll be important. Rory Lobb he's down there on the list, 8.4, but as I'll talk to in a second, he's really important in this match. I think one that surprised me a little bit in terms of the ratings. Now they do. They're hard for the defenders to score. But Buku Kamas, who is an important player for them defensively, obviously his rating this season is 8. Just compare him to Daniel Turner. What's Daniel Turner's rating? So 9.3. He's our Daniel Turner. So Daniel Turner's having a better season than him. So just another one from our list is Jake Lever. He's 9, and Harvey Langford, his player rating this season is 9 as well. In terms of key Oppo players, I think that's obviously the top 2 speak to themselves. They could be 1 or 2, whichever. Richards, as I noted before, he dominated in round 11. He was bananas last week against the Blues. He had the 3rd highest rated game by any player this season. And I think I heard it the highest rated game ever for a Bulldogs player. He finished the match with 31 disposals at 87% efficiency, had 13 contested possessions, 11 score involvements, 2 goals and 644 metres gained. Huge, just as he was in the game against us. He will be critical for us to mitigate. I think Steele goes to him, not in a tagging role, but in a negating role. There's no way that there's been talk on Demonland of Colt maybe going to him, but I don't think Colt moves from the halfback flank. He's our designated defender for small and medium dangerous forwards. I think Charlie Cameron, and I think Colt will probably likely. It'll be interesting to see whether he could go to Waitman. Or alternatively, his name's just escaped me. What's his name? Alternatively, Arthur Jones, who I saw Arthur Jones earlier in the season. He played in that the Casey Footscray game at Whitten Oval round early in the season, and he was impressive. He's been in the season since, and he is sort of their most dangerous small forward, with Cody Waitman yet to get fully back up to his best. So perhaps Colt goes to him. I can't see Colt taking a tagging role. I don't think we do tagging roles at all, really. We're negating roles. So, and I think that's what they'll try to do to Richards. Steele will probably go to him. He's number 1 for the Dogs for metres gained per game, Richards. Interestingly, he's also number 1 for turnovers per game. It's partly, obviously, to do with the position he plays. All his possessions are under pressure. But nonetheless, that provides an opportunity for us to sort of put that pressure on him and get him to cough the footy up. The Bont goes without saying, talked enough about him, but he's number 1 for the Dogs for contested possessions, uncontested possessions, centre clearances and score involvements. And I think there probably isn't really a plan for him. Just hope he has an off day and, doesn't cut us up too badly. Lobb, I put him in here as one of the key players, really purely and simply for his ability to basically tag Maxi the way he did in round 11, and the way the Cats, and I expect that the Beveridge will use him in a similar way to the Cats use Blickharves in their win over us. That's to say, really just to negate and blunt Maxi's influence, as opposed to being an offensive ruck like, say, Jackson was against him. I think that's the way most teams who don't have a gun ruck will play Maxi from here on in, and makes sense, to be honest. So, and perhaps that's why they're not going with Emmett, as I mentioned before, because Maxi would monster him, and I do wonder whether that would make it difficult for them to basically run a smaller rucks against Maxi. So look for lots of scragging, look for lots of blocking, look for Lobb to not even bothering going for marks, just trying to stop Maxi doing so. Look for lots of things with, I think, Bevo bringing extras goes to the stoppages, which he does all the time to minimise the impact of Maxi's around the ground stoppages. So look for also Lob to do what Jerry did against us in this the last game we played him, which is basically often not even bother sort of going for the tap outs himself, and so therefore look for the Dogs to be looking to shark the tap work of Maxi. I think that's that makes Lob a really key player, because if he can do that, they're in with a chance in this game. And the other one is Bailey Dale. He's number one for the Dogs for effective disposal for games, intercepts per game, and reflecting the way he likes to play, which is that sort of running halfback flanker. He's number one for the Dogs for running bounces. I put him in as a key player. I could have easily put him out. In a way, it's similar. I was thinking about putting Norton in as a key player, but Norton will play well if the Dogs move the ball well, but won't if they don't, if that makes sense. And similarly with Bailey Dale, is that what happened last time? He was a really critical player last time. He's really important for the way they transition the ball. Intercept per games is a good sort of evidence of that. Really important for you run and carry. He gets good distance. What's his metres gained? So their top metre gained players are Ed Richards, 559 this year, Bailey Dale second, so 554 metres gained. Bond's third, 476. God, what a player. So a super important player to the way they play, the way they move the ball from the back half. He hurt us last time, I think, because we didn't press up, and we weren't in their grill the way we are now. We're really smashing that bonnet. That frontal pressure has been awesome. Our ability to get multiple numbers to players has been awesome. So he was damaging in that game, I think, in large part because we allowed him to be damaging to an extent. We didn't really put pressure on him, and I think that's a function of our struggles with our running power that day. So I don't think that will be the case this week, and I think that we'll basically close down space. He will not get as many metres gained this on Saturday as he did the last time he played them. I'd be shocked, and ditto for running bounces. So I expect that we'll give him no time or space and really look to press up on him. And in particular, take away his handball receive option. They love to handball to him and really squeeze up both the person doing the handball, but him, really importantly, we've done that really well at times this year, particularly against Hawthorn. We've really taken away, in both the times we beat them, really done a good job on taking away that handball receive option by pressure, basically by swarming, getting multiple players to the contest and making it really difficult for oppos to chain up out from a clearance or from whatever, for moving the ball. And I expect that's what we'll do again. So yeah, they're the key players for them. Just some this week, as I've been doing the last few weeks, some comments about D's players. I just wanted to talk about Jeffo. Actually, he was awesome last week. He had his highest, I think it's his highest rated. I'm almost certain it's highest rated game of footy. From 21 player rating points or 20.8, something like that. He was awesome. And there's a YouTube channel called The Mighty Demons. It's terrific, and it has each week they put up clips of highlights of all the players. There was a comment on the Stats File thread on Demonland about this, about the mismatch between the Demonland voting. Basically, no one gave him a vote, and his high rating, and the sort of commentary or the feeling, the thread of that, and I think it was fantastic, Demon. If you're listening to this is my response to that, is that there's a mismatch. And so, but for me, that's exactly, it's the perfect example of how the eye test is flawed, I think. So I watch games of footy, I watch the replay, then I look at the numbers. If you look at the Mighty Demons highlights clip on YouTube of Jeffo's game, Fantastic Demon, Fanatic Demon, I think it's called. If you're listening to this, watch that clip and then look at through the lens of his involvement in scoring. And so his contribution to our scoring was amazing last week. And so I think he's going to be important in this game. His running power is massive. he's not going to be at the moment. He's not a replacement for JVR. So sort of this talk about, he can step into those shoes. It's not his go at the moment. He's not big enough and strong enough. But he is. I'm really sort of getting more and more bullish about him. And that game last week was terrific. And as I say, I'd really encourage everyone to have a look at the Mighty Demons highlights of him in that game, and marry them up with and have a look at his player ratings, because the two together really gives a good sense of how impactful he was. But I'm getting more and more bullish about him. He already flies for pack super well. He's a beautiful athlete, gets up and down the ground well. He reads the ball super well. So when he gets stronger and adds winning one-on-one contests to his toolbox, he's going to be a beast, I think. It's a cliche because it's true that key position players take longer to get to their optimal level, because, of course, like a key forward relies on their physical strength and size. Hawkins is a really good example of this. Men keep getting bigger until they're about 25, and big blokes like the key forwards and key defenders, they fill out quite a bit. Between, say, 20 into 24, 25. Even someone like a Langford, who I've been talking about, he'll end up bigger and stronger than Bont, I reckon. And Bont filled out like heaps between, they were the same height, Bont and Langford, when they were drafted. And I think Langford will fill out. So, it's always been thus with key forward. So he's got a bit of going. I remember reading on Demon, he's got a bit of growing to do, Jeffo. I remember reading on Demon Land last year, and perhaps it was in a track watcher's thread, that Jeffo told someone he struggles to put muscle mass on, but it's working on it. It's really important. He's only just turned 22, I think March this year, so he's got at least another couple of years of physical growth of him where he'll fill out. With another full pre-season, he'll be bigger and stronger next season, and with 2 or 3 more AFL pre-seasons, he'll be plenty strong enough to win those one-on-one contests. And it was really pleasing, even though he lost a couple last week, of how frustrated he was when he did. That's, for me, a really good sign. Jay Amos provides a really interesting comparison to Jeffo, I reckon. He's had another year in the system. He's a year older than Jeffo. He's noticeably filled out and got bigger in the chest and the shoulders this season, Amos. And as a result, he's much, much better in one-on-one marking contests, as we saw at the G a couple of weeks ago. So I think a really good comparison. So I did a comparison on FootyWire of how Amos compared stats-wise to Jeffo at the same age Jeffo is now. So sort of the short version of that is Jeffo compares really favourably with Amos at the same age. So the sample, some of these numbers, just for I guess completion's sake, the sample is at this same age. Jeffo's played 15 at the same age. Amos had played 24. So Jeffo matches him in a bunch of key stats. So, for instance, 1.2 goals to Amos's 1.3 at the same age, 2.9 marks to Amos 3.4, and a bunch of others. There aren't really any where it's a really big gap that Amos has over Jeffo at the same age. But Amos, for Jeffo, has higher per game average at the same age as Amos in the following key stats are all really important ones. So contested marks, Jeffo averages 1.1 contested marks a game, and at the same age, Jai Amos was averaging 0.8 contested marks per game. He averages at the same age more contested possessions, more inside 50s. This is Jeffo, more goal assists, more metres gained, more score involvement, more disposals, more intercepts, more tackles inside 50s, and more tackles. So they're impressive numbers. So, I'm really getting more and more excited about Jeffo. So, it is a huge opportunity for him. I feel like he's got sort of he's not going to replace Roo, and that's a huge out. I don't think there's any way of sugarcoating how big an out that is. I think that we've picked I'm buying shares in Jeffo is the short version. So anyone selling, I'm buying. Right. So the keys to winning. So I've heard David King on the various shows. He loves his slogans, but and I think Montagna was talking about pressure is diamonds and was talking what I've been talking about. So I reckon, Joey Montagna, if you're listening, I'm guessing you are because you keep repeating the things I talk about on this podcast about how incredible our pressure is and how important it is. But also he was talking about I'm right in saying that top six versus other teams. When top six win the pressure rating, they win 85 or 90% of those games. And overall, teams that win the pressure rating at 75%, and that's up from previous years. And that's what I've been talking about for a few years now, is the pressure rating is just about, apart from the score, obviously, just about the most consistently accurate bellwether of likelihood of winning. Teams don't, 75% of teams that win the pressure rating count this year go on to win the game. I think I'm right in saying that. So up from 65% last year. So anyway, the pressure makes diamonds was what Montagna was saying. Well, my slogan, I prefer this one. So you can steal it if you like. Pressure and contest remain undefeated for us. Everything else flows from there for us. So, for me, that's our DNA is pressure and contest, and obviously was under Goody too. So there's a lovely connection there. Everything else flows from there. When we win the pressure and contest, our ability to intercept, that's to say win the ball back off our opponent, our ability to create turnovers and therefore have the opportunity to score from those turnovers, everything really, our attitude all flows from winning the contest and pressure. So that's a given. The other given, I think, is scoreboard pressure. I've mentioned before the Dogs are really struggling to put decent scores on the board, and I think we just win this game if we can get to 100 points. I can't see them putting 100 points past us. So if we get to 100 points, we win this game. That's a given, I think. So scoreboard pressure, obviously. And I think that they will really struggle with the G to stop us putting to get to 100 points, given our record there, only having lost one game, our ability to score in bursts, our firepower, our run, how well we, as I mentioned before, use the width of the MCG and how well that suits our run, and our athletic profile across the team. And I think also their big problem for, challenge will be in terms of stopping us putting 100 points plus on is how aggressive they are defensively with, for example, Karmas. He sets up really aggressively in front of his opponent, hardly ever back shoulder. We are really back shoulder. We are really one-on-one defensively. It's great to watch. Of course, we zone off. We do all of that stuff. But if you watch us, there's been a talk about our intercepts. I think I'm right in saying that 4 of the top 6 intercepts in the AFL in terms of turning intercept into a score. So I think it's Karmas, Rivers, might be Bowie. There's a couple others. I had it here actually. So when I find it, I'll come back to it. But they set up very aggressively in front, and it's too late for them to change. That's their defensive system. So that if we can move the ball fast on the weekend, which I think we will, the way we transition the ball with our, how quickly we play on, how quick we move the ball, how, we kick long and we win that contest, as I said, that gives us a real opportunity, the way they set up defensively, to get behind them and really hurt them on turnover. So I expect that if we win this game and play well, we'll be plus 15, plus 20 or something on turnover, or plus 10 or something. But outside those givens, I think the 2 keys for us to winning are winning scores from stoppages. So that's stoppages are centre square clearances and around the ground stoppages. And the other key, I think, is that our running power and running game is optimal and in really good shape. So looking at winning scores from stoppages on the Demonland podcast on Monday night, I noted that a really interesting aspect of our last 2 games, the wins over the Dockers and Port, was we lost in both games. We lost both the total clearances and scores from stoppages. So it's really unusual for us to win games when our opponent scores more than us from stoppages, as Port and Freo did. So that's really unusual for us. It's less unusual for us to lose the total clearance battle, however. which is interesting because, as I discussed with George on Monday night, it's fascinating given how given our strength in the clearance and stoppage space with Maxi, and the fact that our midfield is humming. It's really interesting that how often we lose the raw number of total clearances in a match. I'd really like to unpack that and understand that a little bit better, but it has to be, given how well we're travelling, it has to be a tactical thing, or at least in terms of how other teams play us, because it's sort of statistically we're now 23 games into the season, and so it can't just be a statistical blip. I expect a lot of other teams, I think that's partly a function of other teams bringing extras to the stoppage, like Bevo did in our previous encounter with them, like Clarkson did in the Roos game, and I expect that Bevo will happen again to mitigate the how good Maxi is in those spaces. So they bring extras. That gives us an extra back potentially defensively, or players to run forward of the ball as well, and we can hurt teams on offense. So we're brilliant at intercepting the ball, and so that's a bit like how Goody used to set it up. Don't bring an extra stoppage and have that player as on the defensive side of the stoppage who can win that contest. Doesn't have to be a player like a loose defender back. That used to be the case under Goody. It can just be a player. A player on the defensive side of the stoppage who hasn't come up to the stoppage, but if they win it, if they win the actual stoppage, we limit the damage from that because we've got players coming up into their grill. I think, it's a curious one. That's just a guess. I don't know. As I said, I think a couple of weeks ago, I'm open for anyone who's got an idea on the answer to that question. Whack it in the stats file, throw it on Demon Land. So evidencing that what I'm talking about is we're number 9 for total clearances in the AFL. So, mid-table for total clearances for such a good midfield and the best ruckman in my lifetime. It's crazy that we're number 9 for clearances, but we're number 4 for scores from stoppages. So despite being number 9 for total clearances in the AFL, we're 4th for scores from stoppages behind the Swans, Lions and Freo. So you can see how the fact that it's Swans, Lions, Freo and us, you can see how critical scores from stoppages are. The very best teams win the scores from stoppage battle more often than not. So we are number 4. Conversely, the Dogs, they're number 3 behind the Lions and the Cats for total clearances. So we're number 9 for total clearances. They're number 3. However, unfortunately for the Dogs, they're number 12 for scores from stoppages. So they will not beat us in this game if they can't at least match us for scores from stoppages, I think. So it's a critical part of the game. And if we win the total clearances, just the total clearance totals, the numbers, we'll smash them for territory. If we smash them for territory, we'll get it inside 50 more often. If we get it inside more often, if we're plus 10 and plus 11, plus 15 inside 50s, we'll just put their back 7 under too much pressure, their defensive system under too much pressure, so then more pressure than they'll be able to handle, and we'll just smash them. I think we'll pull them apart. So for me, that's going to be critical. Again, it's really sort of, I have to think that Libba is injured, because without Libba, it's really hard to see them winning, at least winning the scores from stoppages without Libba, and they're going to struggle to win the total clearances. So I think that's key. The other one, running power, it's central to how we play footy. I've been talking about this all season. It's really just been fantastic to watch. You can see how it translates. Like the focus for a lot of the commentary about our running power is on our movement from the back half. So moving it, transitioning from our D50, for instance, or our defensive half to our forward half inside 50. And that wave running, I heard David King describe it last night when, or the other night, Thursday night perhaps, when the Suns, was that last night? The Suns moved the ball down in a wave, and he called it rugby union, like a rugby union wave, which I thought was an excellent, analogy, because that's how, if you look, you've got the players spreading sort of across the ground who can chain up by handball. When people think about our running power, that's what they often think about, and that's what, the commentator and the analysts often talk about. But really where it's most visible or most impactful, our running player is getting outnumbering at the contest and getting more Melbourne players at the contest in disputed ball than the opponent. And the evidencing that is our post-clearance contested numbers are off the charts. And in the last 2 weeks, they've been amazing. We are plus 34 against the Dockers for post-clearance contested possessions and Bananas plus 38 post-clearance contested possessions against Port. And when we're up and about looking close to our optimal running power, we win that stat hands down. And I think we are up and about. If our running power's on song, we will win post-clearance almost every time. In particular, winning those loose ball gets that I've been talking about as we outnumber our opponents and we swarm them at the contest. So that running power is less about, it looks sexy because we've got multiple players running the ball down the ground under sort of no pressure or whatever. It's really about the combination of that power and winning the contest and having multiple players at the contest if we do turn it over, being able to wave back in defence, getting back. For instance, last week, that running power also was evidenced by ability to keep Port to only 28 points on turnover. That's a hell of a lot of running to move up the ground and then when the ball's turned over, sweep back and then defend that and get multiple players to the next contest going the other way, if that makes sense. So hugely important. So if we're on, we'll win the post-clearance contested possessions. I think we will. Yvonne, look for us to have most, if not all, of the top 5 players for average speed and defence. And one of the interesting things about the sort of running power and athleticism and that profile was it's unlike winning scores from the stoppage battle, which, maybe opposition coach can find some tactical tools in the toolbox to sort of do that and, who you bring up, who you play, tagging, all of those things. So there's ways to, potentially sort of stop us scoring from stoppages, for instance, or not scoring as often as we have. There's nothing you can do about stopping running power. The only thing that an opposition can do to stop our running power is match us. And the Dogs simply don't have the athletic profile to match us, as evidenced by a whole bunch of numbers, but not least of which that they really struggle in the transition space. Which is unusual for them because that was what they brought to footy in 2016 in some ways, that sort of fast ball movement, all of those little handballs and running. And but if you don't have the athletic profile, you don't have the athletic profile. They will not be able to match us in that space. So, which brings me to the final bit, prediction. I think we will play our A game. We'll look to use the width of the MCG. I think we'll play much like we did against Port last week. I thought we'd put the queue in the rack last week. We didn't. We kept running through the line. I think, I talked a lot all season about our bye not coming to round 17, and also did say that maybe there's a silver lining in that it means that we're in better shape and closer to our optimal shape than our opponents come the pointy end of the season. And I think we're seeing that. We were awesome last week in the way we ran out that game. We were awesome how we ran out the game against Port against the Dockers. And it says to me that we're putting the pedal to the metal. It's all systems go for us. And I think we won't be looking to be cute. I think we'll come out and look to play our best game. I think we'll really have a focus on winning scores from stoppages, and I think we'll have a real focus on getting out numbers at the contest. I think we'll be way too strong. We've got everything to play for. We deserve a top 6. We're easily one of the top 6 sides in the AFL. I think we'll show it on Saturday. I'm predicting us to win by 4 to 5 goals plus, 5 goals plus. Cannot wait. I'm half tempted to, I've been sitting on the wing most of this season. I'm half tempted to go to the top of the Ponsford to watch us, the structure and our system play. I think I probably will. Yeah, get along, support the boys. Huge game for us. We win this game. Next time that we'll play a game of footy is the elimination final. We get a week's rest. We've got Howes coming back into the team. That was the player that sort of, I think, will be an important one for us. Get along to the game, support the boys. I'm looking forward to being there. Cannot wait. Go D's, go Red Leggers.
It's a grand old flag. It's a high-flying flag. It's an emblem for me and for you. Well, it's the emblem of the team we love, the team true for the red and the blue as we sing a song for you. Should old acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the red and the blue. Where the team played fine in the year 39, we're the team that no one can lick. And you'll find us there after the final bell with the spirit of 1926. Every heart beats true for the red and the blue as we sing this song to you.